Our verse for today is Psalm 16 verse 1. Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. Psalm 16 is a cry for preservation, for trust and assurance in God. It opens in verse 1 with a prayer for protection, seeking God's deliverance from crisis, or expressing the hope for God's ongoing protection in the future. There are two key threats that the psalm addresses. The first is the threat of idolatry. As the psalmist prays against the temptation of syncretism or blending worship and belief in God with worship and belief in other gods and other sources of protection, we can see verses 2 to 4. The second is the threat of death, that is, from the pit of Sheol, see verse 10. These were the perilous circumstances David found himself in his relationship with God and in his life, particularly when he fled from King Saul. So, while his friends served two masters, the psalmist prayed against these threats, rejecting false gods in order to serve the one true God. The psalmist beseeches God for protection. El, the most prevalent name for God in Hebrew, as used here, denotes God as the strong and mighty one. And the Hebrew verb shamar means to protect, maintain, watch over, tend, or guard flocks. Hence, God, the mighty one, possesses the natural tendency to protect, assist, and guard his flock and those who seek him in times of need. Thus, the psalmist exclaims, "For in you I take refuge." Only God can provide refuge, as stated in Isaiah chapter 57 verse 13. Whoever seeks refuge in me, it says, will inherit the land. Psalm 118 verse 8 says, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in men." And Psalm 143 verse 9 says, "Deliver me, O Lord, from my enemies. I take refuge in you." So, reiterating the words of 2 Samuel chapter 22 verse 3, "My deliverer is my God. I take refuge in him." The psalmist makes a statement of faith and vow to trust only God, even in the most important and hazardous moments of his life. Many Christians are questioning their relationship with God, the value of prayers, and expressing despair about their circumstances around the world, particularly in Nigeria, where priests are kidnapped and Christians are persecuted and killed on a regular basis. Terrorism's purpose is to instill fear in people's hearts and get them to question their religious and moral beliefs. And the church has faced these scenarios since its inception. Countless people have been martyred in churches, on altars, and in the streets for their trust in God. God, on the other hand, does not abandon his children. He has bestowed upon us the gifts of free will and intelligence to make the best decisions possible. Taking refuge in God is living in God's life, which is founded on the freedom to choose good over evil. It is consequently in our hands to improve our circumstances by utilizing the gifts conferred upon us. Let us never give in to the horror of evil. Instead, let us pray that God would preserve us as we seek refuge in him, that he would protect us from all forms of evil and assist us to help ourselves to live resolute lives and improve our circumstances. Let us pray. Protect us, O Lord, as we seek refuge in you. Deliver all our kidnapped brothers and sisters languishing in captivity. Heal those hurt or have lost loved ones in the recent mass shootings in our churches, and grant everlasting rest to the martyrs. May your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven.